Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Melbourne Law School, physically or virtually, for those of you joining us from around the world. My name's Carolyn Evans. I'm here at the Law School, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you here tonight for our second Law Apps Bake-Off. Begin by acknowledging that the traditional owners of this land are the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and I pay my respects to their elders, past and present. Well, I'd like to begin tonight with some real thank yous because, as you can probably tell, this is a huge effort and we're so grateful to the very many people who've made it possible. I need to start with Gary Cazalet, the teacher extraordinaire from this subject, who's taken it from a bit of a wild idea that we had 2 years ago into a subject that has proven itself over a 2-year period to be, I think, a really extraordinary educational experience. But this is not your standard teaching opportunity, and I know Gary's had to put a lot of time and effort into the program. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, Slater and Gordon, who've been a great partner to us in this, and as you'll hear, one of my fellow judges tonight is from the firm, and we're very grateful to you for your ongoing sponsorship and support of this subject. I'd also like to thank our other main partner, Neota Logic, and recognise John Lord, who's here today, one of the people who was there for the wild idea 2 years ago. And I'd like to acknowledge that Neota has not only provided the necessary technical support for this program to run, but has also really played a strong educative role, and to thank the staff, a number of whom are here tonight, for the wonderful role that they've played in assisting our students. I'd like to thank our partners. I think one of the things that makes this such a great educational opportunity for students is the fact that we're not working in theory or in the abstract, but that they are working with partners on a real-world project that has the potential to have real-world benefits. And we've already seen this from at least one of our projects from last year, which is now launched, up and running, and helping a body, and is the case of most people in the community legal sector and in the side of the legal sector that's trying to give support to some of the most vulnerable and some of the more needy groups in our society, often desperately underfunded and desperately in need of new solutions, of new ways of thinking about things. And it's just wonderful for us to have an opportunity to work with you to try and help you on those important missions. And finally, I'd like to acknowledge and thank the students for all the work that you've put in. I know that this is just as not an ordinary subject to teach, it's not an ordinary subject to participate in either, and that the really valuable experience you get from this subject, you get because you have to put in a lot of hard work, a lot of effort, a lot of nights using all sorts of social media to try and communicate with each other. And this is, I think, a really great example of teamwork really working in the law school. And there are some controversies sometimes about group work, but when you've got a meaningful outcome, when you've got a real client that you're working with, and you've got something that you're all committed to, a goal that you're committed to, I think that you've been capable of extraordinary things. And those of us who are on the judging panel have been lucky enough to have a sneak preview over the weekend of the apps that you've created, and they are just wonderful, and they are really exceptional outputs to be able to do in such a short period of time. And it might have felt like a long period of time, it's the middle of the night on Saturday sometimes, but in real world time, it's an incredibly short time to go from here's your client and here's your idea to such polished, professional and wonderful projects. Now, tonight's been structured as a competition. We're going to have a winner, we've got a cake, we'll have certificates. And at one level, that's nice. It just gives us a bit of an impetus for the night. But really, I like to think of it as a showcase because whoever we end up deciding is the winner, I think all of you have done things that as a law school we are incredibly proud of, that you should be incredibly proud of. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity to show the people who are here tonight what you've done, and also to show the people who are not here but here with us in spirit. Try not to look at the cameras. It's a bit disconcerting. And I know you'll do us proud in the presentations. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Gary Cazalet, who's going to introduce the evening and talk us through what's going to happen next.
Thank you, Carolyn, for those kind words. Well, welcome to the second Law Apps Bake-Off at the Melbourne Law School. My name is Gary Cazalet and I had the great pleasure of teaching the students you'll hear from tonight. We are the first law school in Australia in which students design, build and finalise web-based legal expert systems that provide tailored legal information to consumer. Last year, this subject was taught for the first time, and 3 out of the 4 applications that the students built went on to be used by their client organisations. The legal profession is undergoing and will continue to undergo seismic changes. The manner in which advice is provided, who or what provides that advice or information, the cost of legal services and the nature of legal practice and dispute resolution are areas in which the legal landscape will be quite different within the next decade. It's quite clear that technology will be at the heart of many of these changes, and that technology will deliver better access to justice for those that currently cannot afford access to justice or cannot easily understand the legal system and their rights. Each of the applications built by the students and presented to you tonight will deliver better access to justice and have been carefully and thoughtfully designed so that the people using the applications can understand them. I'd like to welcome and thank the judges for agreeing to judge tonight's bake-off, and I'd like to introduce them. They are Dina Tunji, General Manager, Personal Injury Law Victoria from Slater and Gordon, and as the Dean has said, Slater and Gordon have provided the support to enable us to offer this subject, and I extend my thanks not only to Dina but also to Slater and Gordon for their ongoing support of this subject. You've heard from Professor Carolyn Evans, the Dean of the Melbourne Law School. Professor Evans has taken a keen interest in this subject and also to further technology subjects at the law school. She recognises that our students are facing a rapidly changing workplace, and she is determined to ensure that they will have the skills and knowledge that they need to have to enable them to not only participate but also lead in their chosen professions. Finally, Katie Miller, thank you for coming. She is the Innovation Council, Government and Public Law at the Victorian Government Solicitor. In 2015, she was the President of the Law Institute of Victoria, and towards the end of her term there, she published a report on her profession, on her research into the challenges and opportunities facing the legal profession, called Disruption, Innovation and Change, the Future of the Legal Profession. Before we start the presentation, I'd like to publicly thank a number of the people. The Dean has mentioned some of them. You'll see a number of people mentioned in the program. As the Dean says, the success of this subject is absolutely a group effort, but I just want to single out a few. The applications that you'll see tonight were built on a software platform provided by Neota Logic, a company headquartered in New York, but with offices both in the UK and in Australia. Neota has provided an extraordinary level of support to me and to the students and to each of the client organisations. John Lord, the co-founder of Neota Logic, has made regular trips from the USA and the UK to the law school to challenge, inspire, support and question both me and the entire class, and I welcome him here tonight. Julian Ubergang is the Managing Director of Asia Pacific, and he has been, in the nicest sense of the word, a yes man. Everything I've asked him to do, he said yes to, and it's been absolutely wonderful. Dominique Simpson and Lauren Harston are solution architects at Neota. They design and build apps for law firms. They have also provided, and I know this from looking at the web statistics, often literally around-the-clock service and assistance to the students. Last semester, they were sitting here waiting to get on and to present their apps because last semester they were students in this subject. They, along with at least 4 other students from that class, were offered employment directly from the skills that they developed in this subject. So thank you, Lauren and Dom. I really appreciate it. Kevin Mulcahy is the Director of Education at New York. He has also provided around-the-clock support to us. And the inspiration and know-how for this subject came from Professor Tanina Rostand from Georgetown Law, and I thank her for her support. And finally, I'd like to thank the organisations that have taken part in this subject, and I know the students will thank them as well. The final thanks I want to give are to the students. Being a teacher is a great privilege and an honour. You have done a most extraordinary amount of work through this subject. I am sure you wouldn't have done it if you had any idea what was involved when you started. But as I said to them today, by the time the census time came around where they could pull out, it was all too late. They were involved. Only 13 weeks ago today they started the subject. Only 8 weeks ago today did they meet their client organisations. It's quite extraordinary to think that within 8 weeks they have covered the knowledge that you'll see today. They've designed the applications with their clients and the users in mind and produced what I consider absolutely wonderful applications. So I would like to introduce the first presentation. Each team has 10 minutes to present and followed by 5 minutes of questions from the judges. The teams will introduce themselves as they come up. The first presentation is developed for youth law called My Rights, Laws for Teens and Young People. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are the Youth Law team. My name is Nicholas Parry-Jones, and you'll be hearing from my colleagues Celeste Bird, Jackie Alton, Alison Youssef and Ashley Hodge. We'd like to take this time to thank our client liaison at Youth Law, Lee Carney, who has been an invaluable member of the team with standing Friday meetings, constant feedback and ongoing support. We'd also like to give a big thank you to Mr. Gary Cazalet and the team at Neota for providing the framework through which we could achieve the realisation of this project. Youth Law is a Victorian non-for-profit community legal centre which provides free and confidential advice to young people. The lawyers at Youth Law receive roughly 5 to 10 emails per day, 20 phone inquiries, in addition to carrying out 5 to 6 face-to-face interviews. This workflow is unpredictable. Lengths of these inquiries vary in complexity and time. Each email may take 10 minutes to action, a phone call 15, and a face-to-face appointment 30. For a small team, dealing with all of these inquiries can be extremely time-consuming. With this in mind, Youth Law challenged us to create a solution to disseminate information relevant to young people in an accessible way, whilst also maximising efficiency of their resources through the enhancement of triage and data collection. To provide at-risk youth with information and advice regarding their legal rights and helping them make decisions about their future is the goal of the My Rights app. Furthermore, we provide Youth Law with information unseen at the client level to improve efficiency regarding allocation of their labour. Ladies and gentlemen, this application has 17 separate topics with the number of discrete solutions and ultimate tailored outcomes in the thousands. Given our time constraints, we will only be showing a preset solution based on a composite of users encountered during user testing. And here to discuss user testing is Celeste.
My name's Celeste Bird. I'm following on from Nick. Once we'd envisioned a solution to the challenge Youth Law set us, we created an initial prototype. Through our close collaboration with Youth Law, we were able to facilitate user testing with our target audience. This is young people who are currently using or have used services at Front Yard in King Street in the city. We conducted our user testing in 4 formats. Firstly, through an informal focus group, surveys, group user testing, as well as one-on-one individual testing. Using the feedback from these sessions, we were then able to focus our resources according to the needs and requirements of our target audiences as reported by them. This led to specifically refinements in our language in order to make increased accessibility for young people from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, as well as various levels of reading ability. We also focused on creating a mobile-friendly app, which, as reported by young people, is how they access information online. And also, we attempted to reduce the data required to access the service, such as limiting a need for page reloads and less graphics in light of our potential clients often having limited data allowances or access to data. Further, our app was built with the issue of leaving home at its spine, as this was the issue reported to by users to be most relevant and useful to them. I'll pass to Jackie to outline our app and its features in further detail.
Hi, I'm Jackie Alton. I'll be walking you through just a few issues of our app. So this is our welcome page. This is just a brief introduction to the app, and the first thing we really needed to do was to get our users' age. This is because age is very important in determining many of the legal questions in the app. So we've got a user here who's 16, and if she then clicks through to next, we're brought through to the issues page. From here, users can select as many issues as they'd like using these buttons. The app runs through the issues in the order seen here, prioritising the major issues on the left before moving through to the secondary issues in the right column. This particular user wants information about leaving home, seeing a doctor, relationships, and alcohol. So if we click next, our user will be brought to the first issue that they've selected. We've pre-selected these answers here, but if you were to run through the app normally, only questions relevant to your inquiry would appear. For example, this set of questions about mistreatment below have appeared only because our user has selected "somebody is treating me badly" above. The answers to this question help to calculate a risk score that Alison will discuss later. It's also important to note that these questions are more than is strictly necessary to provide a simple yes or no answer to our user's inquiry. This is because our app aims to provide more than legal information, but also practical advice about each user's situation. We can also see a pop-up in the final question below. User testing suggested that less text would be preferable in questions, so this cuts down on the number of words seen without compromising on the information provided. If we click through to next, we'll see the conclusion of this issue. So when you finish each issue, you're brought to a brief report containing the legal information and practical advice of your situation. For leaving home, this covers whether or not you legally can move out of home, but also whether the user should, based on their answers, as well as some possible consequences, highlighted by the reality check icon. Here, that might be DHS involvement for this user. Clicking through to next, the user's brought to the next set of questions pertaining to the issues they've selected. Here, that means seeing a doctor. These questions appear slightly differently depending on the user's age that they input at the beginning. Because this user is 16, we'd like to find out a bit more about their Medicare situation so that we can provide the most practical advice. If we click through to the report for this issue, we'll see some further resources and information. These appear in many of the reports throughout the app, because often further steps are required for users to resolve the issues that they've raised. So this user probably wants to get their own Medicare card, and because they've asked about abortion, they might want to be contacting Family Planning Victoria, so those resources are provided in the report. We can also see on the right-hand side at the top that we've put in a letter. These templates appear on several issues where parental permission, while not strictly required by law, can prove problematic for users in accessing their needs. So this letter was generated because the user has indicated that they do not have parental permission to see a doctor. They need to demonstrate they understand the procedure and the risks, and this letter can help them express that. Our user simply downloads the letter, fills in the reasons why they don't have parental permission to see medical treatment, and then can give the letter to their doctor. I'll now pass to Alison to demonstrate the next stages of the app.
Hi everyone, my name's Alison Youssef and I'll be focusing on the relationships and alcohol issues. So as you can see here, the user is asked 3 questions on relationships and whether they can provide consent to intimate relationships while they're underage. If we go to next, we'll see that that the user is actually provided with a clear conclusion and also an explanation why they cannot have consensual sex. If we actually go back, I've actually forgotten something, sorry. There's actually a really interesting thing here that occurs, a really interesting feature, which is the when were you born and when was your partner born. And we actually have a feature in the back end of Neota which allows us to calculate the age difference based on days. And this is really important because, basing the age difference on years may not be completely accurate. So, if we click next, twice, sorry. And again. So now we've come to the alcohol issue, and as you can see again, we've got 3 questions. So about buying and drinking alcohol. If we click next, we'll notice a key feature here is the reality check. And this was really important for Youth Law to include because we don't want to just include legal information and legislation. We wanted to include advice that was practical so that Youth Law wouldn't be condoning unhealthy or dangerous activities, even if it was legal. So if we click next, we'll see that once all the issues are discussed, the user is presented with a contact page. And here you can see Mai has input all of her details. If we click next. What happens now is that Mai is actually given a complete report of all of the issues that she has chosen, as well as the advice for future reference. She's also provided with a PDF, which provides all of the information. At the same time as this firing off, Youth Law is provided with an email from Mai, stating the issues that she chose, as well as a risk score And this was really important for youth law because it allows for them to categorise and prioritise cases based on their risk score and the issues that they've chosen. So that is the end of our run through, and I'll now pass to Ashley, who's going to focus on layout and design.
Thanks, Alison. As Alison said, I am Ashley Hodge and I'm talking about layout and design today. If I could draw your attention, first of all, just to the header and the footer and the logo of our app. Now, during the time we were developing this app, Youth Law were actually undergoing the design of a new website to sort of increase access for younger people, and they kindly allowed us to access their prototype so that we could replicate the header and the footer and use the imagery from their homepage in order to keep it consistent. At the end of the day, our aim was to have this application integrated into their website, so there needed to be a seamless transition between using the website and actually using the interface of the app. One of the most important things that you'll notice is that the only question we ask on this home screen is how old the user is. While this is important for determining the issue relevant later in the app, it was also a design choice for us. Throughout our development process, we became really aware that there's a fine line between offering tailored information and personal advice, and also asking users for too much invasive information. So we've created a solution by designing a question flow that's non-invasive and inclusive, in an inclusive way. If we could just jump to the issue selection page. Thanks. So on this issue selection page, you'll notice that we've got icons and buttons instead of just listed text for users to select their issue. We've actually utilised the same designer that Youth Law uses for the icons on their website to create some more consistency. Accessibility was one of the things that was at the forefront of our mind while we were designing this application, and it's optimised for smartphone. So these columns appear equally on the smartphone. So it's easy for users, which is going to be the predominant way that they access the information. And the users are also presented with these icons as they follow through the application, so they can take that through and know what questions are relevant to what topic, and the same in the report. And this is particularly important for users that may have cultural or linguistically diverse backgrounds, or who may have had interrupted learning at some stage during their life. So we aim to have an app that was accessible to everyone in every way. Thank you. That concludes our presentation, and we'll now open up to judges' questions.
Well, congratulations. That's a wonderful app, and I'm sure going to be very useful. So let me start with the question. You're covering a lot of different areas, quite complex, and where there might be a bit of discretion. So the law isn't necessarily black or white. It might depend on the 16-year-old and their level of understanding or those sorts of things. How did you try and get a balance between giving just clear advice, yes you can, no you can't, which is I suppose easiest for people, but also giving some of the nuance around those discretions? Can you talk a little bit about that process?
It's a really great question. It's something that we kind of had a lot of back and forth with throughout the process of the app, because it was really important to get the information in the way that it was, delivered to our users, to get that right. So what we've sort of done is we've got the clear legal conclusion in bold on each of the reports. We've then got sort of little information icons that give follow-up advice, and then also our reality check icons, which sort of give further information about whether it would be sort of a good idea for them to go forward. So it was part of the design as well as sort of the layout, I guess, of our issue, so that they can get the most important information and then follow through to that other info. Yeah.
Terrific. Thank you.
Well done, guys. It's such a practical and useful tool, I think, for our youth who, some of which I know it's sort of a time-saving exercise, but some people would probably be reluctant to come forward. So I think it sort of captures that area of our youth as well. So I'm just wondering, apart from integrating it into the Youth Law website, how do you envisage you would sort of raise awareness in the community about this app?
In our user testing, we asked a lot of the young people about, like, would you use this just straight up, and, like, how would you find out about it? A lot of that we found is if it was advertised through Facebook, which going forward is basically on our wish list. But also we found for a lot of our users that they were actually learning a lot about just the general law that they weren't aware of before, which is a really great thing about the app, but also about the fact that they could immediately, easily refer themselves to youth law and go, there is this resource to give you more information that you can access and is designed for you. So in terms of getting the word out there, that's something we're looking for in future to further, to go forward with that. But yeah, that's probably what I would say in answer to that one. But yeah, thanks.
I certainly concur with all of the congratulations, and I must say the point about only asking enough information as you need to at a time, as a privacy practitioner, I completely got that. My heart sang when I saw that first question was just, how old are you, and not what is your date of birth, because I think that is a reflexive thing that a lot of organisations do, and I must say it personally drives me crazy. So that was great. My question is, I note that you've got the risk score, which lets youth law know when somebody might need to be prioritised. Some of the stuff you're dealing with here is, really heavy stuff, and I'm just wondering, how did you go about reflecting back to the user that what they're dealing with is actually quite heavy and they might need to go and talk to someone quite significant sooner rather than later?
So when you do get to an issue where something like family violence is raised, which does happen in the leaving home issue, although they don't see a risk score saying, oh, you're really at risk or this is really bad, because that can be quite confronting, there are little warning issues that we perhaps have skimmed past a little part, saying you might face some issues leaving home, but also it seems like the living situation that you're in isn't quite safe. Here are some resources directly. So I guess it would fall into that resources and further information packet, which is part of each report.
Wonderful. Well, let's give another round of applause. It's a great talk.
That was a great presentation. Thank you. We're just waiting for the next group to come up. The next group is designed the Tax Concessions Guide for Not-for-Profit Law.
Thanks, Gary. Good evening, everyone. My name's Madeline Maslin. My team consists of Jack Stoneman, Dougal Stevenson and Imogen Smith-Waters. We've built the Tax Concessions Guide for Not-for-Profit Law, which is a division of Justice Connect. I'd like to begin by thanking Kate Fazio and the Not-for-Profit Law team. It's been a real privilege to work with you and to contribute to the important work you do. Thank you also to our professor, Gary Cazalet, for his infectious enthusiasm, and to Neota Logic, particularly Lauren, for supporting us so diligently. At present, the NFPL tax resources are comprehensive but are highly generalised and can be overwhelming for users. As a result, the NFPL team spends a lot of time responding to inquiries from organisations seeking to understand how the concessions apply to them. At the NFPL Tax Concessions Seminar, which a few of us were fortunate to attend, we spoke to this potential user about the benefits of our app. So hopefully everyone could hear that. But with that in mind, our brief was to produce an app that would inform these organisations about their eligibility for certain tax concessions, and also to offer guidance about how to access them. So this is our app here, as you can see. So to achieve our goals, we've reconfigured NFPL's existing resources into a step-by-step guide designed to walk organisations through the tax concessions journey in a language that they can understand. Our approach was to create an interactive information resource that delivers highly relevant, personalised information in a way that also educates the user. Our app needed to be intuitive, concise, and also comprehensive, but we also wanted to build an easy-to-use, user-friendly platform that would make users feel confident about the opportunities that tax concessions can offer them, which is one of the issues that was really flagged in that video if people could hear it. So in order to illustrate sort of how we move through the process of determining concession eligibility and also understanding the various discrete areas of law, we've used some of the NFPL graphics to produce this mind map. My colleague Jack will start at stage 1 to explain how we determine an organisation's eligibility for a wide range of tax concessions. And from there, that will actually tailor information about these 4 areas of tax, which Dougal and Imogen will talk you through. And then based on the inputs at that level of the app, that'll funnel you into a highly personalised report, which the others will also describe. We have also identified, just at the top here, a few areas that our app doesn't cover. So that's certain types of organisations and also recipients of deductible gifts or donations, as they're more commonly known. We've also used, as you can see, if you're familiar with the website, some of the formatting and colour schemes that are from NFPL's existing resources, and that's just to ensure that our app will fit seamlessly with their existing online offering. So I'll now hand over to Jack. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Jack Stoneman, and I'll be taking you through the first sort of stage of our application. So tax law is extremely complex, particularly for maybe under-resourced not-for-profits. So the functional approach that we've adopted is to try and ask really discrete, simple questions. So questions that on face value you should be able to answer, and if you can't, there are support structures around those questions. So we found that when we were sort of doing our research that a lot of the information on the internet is quite lateral. You have to have maybe 15 or 20 tabs open on your web browser in order to find the information, and then you have to find the links in between that. So what we wanted to do was adopt a very sort of functionally linear approach, is sort of how we've tried to term it. So with tax, the areas that we've looked at for the not-for-profits, there's 2 very important preliminary questions that need to be answered, and that sort of enables the application to pivot based on the conclusions that are set to these. So you won't actually see it in this illustration of our application, because the conclusions we set will take you down one pathway, but were they to be different, it would go an entirely different pathway. So the first of these preliminary conclusions we need to set, or the user needs to understand, is whether or not they are an ACNC registered charity. So it's a very discrete yes/no factual question, and we just direct them to the online register where they put in either their NBN or their company business name, and that will tell them whether or not they're registered. So for the purposes of illustration, our company is registered. It will then ask them if they're a tax concession charity, which is a type of tax office endorsement, and you will know if you are because you will have gone through the process. So this organisation is not. Given that they're not, the application then takes them through a test to determine whether or not they're potentially eligible. So most of our conclusions are based on potential eligibility because we can't give them exact advice. And we've taken the liberty of presetting their inputs here. So they are wholly in Australia, which means that they have to satisfy the objectives and expenditure test in Australia. There's more information about that within the tip box, and the governing rules and assets conditions. So the questions are very discrete. They should be able to focus on them one at a time rather than have to sort of work their way around multiple sources. It's very linear. It takes them through that. It will then set a conclusion based on that. So once we select next, the logic in the application will have used all that information to set a conclusion, which will then drive the remainder of the application as we use it. So I'll put you through to Imogen and Dougal, and they'll show you now from this page how the user chooses their information and works their way through the application.
Hi everyone, I'm Dougal Stevenson, and I'll talk to you about some of the ways we convey information to the user. So from this screen, the user has a very important decision, and that's what area of legal information do they actually want to find out about. Now, you can choose one or all or any combination thereof of any of these areas, and the user will be only asked about questions relevant to the areas that they select later in the application, and they will only receive information based on this selection here in the final report. There's no point including information that they don't think is relevant at this point. So let's choose GST and state tax for this. So there's a lot of information here, so I'll briefly highlight some of the ways we, or some of the techniques we use to engage the users and keep them educated and informed. Throughout the app, we use a lot of pop-ups in terms of for definitions and other helpful explanations. A lot of this information is hidden so as not to overwhelm the user, but it is there, and there is a lot of information because it is quite a dense area of law. In addition, if we scroll down, you come across some of these tips which are provided every so often. It really draws the attention of the user and provides some really helpful advice about how they go and approach the rest of the questions. If we scroll up just a second, there is a particular question just to demonstrate how dynamic some of the information is presented. If we choose no for this question, is your organisation already registered with the ATO? You'll see instead the user is presented with these scenarios which will help guide them along the way. Instead we'll go yes and continue on to the next page. Again, here we use pop-ups in quite generously and include other notes and visual indicators to again draw the gaze of the viewer. We use tables to present information in a clear manner. Again, this is a summary of information and a really sort of superficial level of the kind of tax concessions that might be available to them. At any point, we do refer the user to external websites such as the ATO when they're unsure or want to find out further information. And now I hand over to Imogen. Thanks.
Hi, my name's Imogen Smith-Waters. So our app also covers state taxes, and importantly, state taxes and the exemptions available to not-for-profit organisations at the state level are different to those at the federal level, and they also differ between the states. So at this stage, we ask the user to indicate which jurisdiction they're operating in. At the moment, the app can service users in New South Wales and Victoria. This reflects the information that is currently available on the not-for-profit law website. However, we've built the app to be scalable so that when further information pertaining to the remaining states is gathered, this can also be replicated in this section of the app. So we'll continue for the purpose of this presentation with Victoria. So again, there are 3 state taxes that the app covers, so stamp duty, land tax and payroll tax. We'll go through with payroll tax for this demonstration. We ask upfront the user whether they have status that is a charitable organisation status. If they click no, we'll prompt them and ask them 2 questions to check their eligibility. The reason for this is that if they were to gain this status, they would have a broader range of exemptions available to them. So we'll click yes for this purpose. And on this page, we give the user an overview of the relevant taxes. So here for payroll, we give them a brief 1-line explanation of what the tax actually is, and we provide some definitions for wages and employees because they actually are legal terms that perhaps have a wider scope that a layperson would expect. We also, in our follow-up question, provide an example. So because some of these questions can be challenging, we've given some context here by providing a hypothetical organisation and demonstrated instances where payroll tax would and would not attract. So this page tells the user that the app has gathered enough information to provide them with a report with indications of their eligibility. They can insert their contact details if they'd like to receive a copy of the report via email, or else if we click through, we can see a live version of the report. And importantly, all the information contained in the report is tailored. So it's based off the inputs that they've indicated, so particular purposes that their organisation serves. So it breaks it down quite clearly for them, gives them an overview of each tax area. And if we scroll a little bit further down, it also covers off some compliance issues, so things that organisations have to be doing to maintain their access and eligibility. And if we scroll further down still, we'll see that we've broken down the steps for application into very discrete steps, and we've also provided links to relevant external websites. If we scroll down a bit further. For instance here, so we've linked the user to the application so they can start that immediately with all this information in one place. So I think, actually, one last point, if they scroll further down, you can start over the app to look into other areas that you might like to explore. But the whole idea is that all the information that they need to know relevant to them is contained in this one report. Thank you.
Well done. You've managed to make a really complicated and difficult subject easily digestible and accessible. Sort of like a bit like a choose your own adventure, but harder. So I really can't believe you've managed to pull that off in 8 weeks. So I'm just wondering, sort of, if you could talk me through maybe the testing, the user testing that was performed, and whether any live testing was undertaken.
So we actually attended a conference last week that Not-for-Profit Law ran. It was an education seminar. And so we actually had a chance to speak to the potential users there. So I'm not sure about the audio on that video at the start of our presentation, but basically what that lady who represented an organisation was saying is that she was surprised at the lack of understanding generally that people at that seminar had. So it seems like because it is such a complicated area of tax, there's just a lot of information missing, and of course running seminars like that is great, but that's resource heavy. So yeah, the feedback was that having it all in this one site would save a lot of resources and time.
Congratulations. I think that nobody's heart sings when they have to engage in tax, and I'm sorry to all the tax lawyers here. I must say, I do love that you've tried to personalise it with the little cartoon characters that follow through, and I thought that was a beautiful touch. Could you talk me through, I mean, because we've all sort of acknowledged that tax is very dense, and I'm just wondering, can you talk us through how you decided which information would be visual to the user and which would be hidden?
I think part of it was first looking at the information we already had in terms of the content that was already on the not-for-profit law page, which was very general and very kind of impersonal. It gave users very little information about how to sort of self-determine what areas might be relevant to them, and also how to step through, determining that eligibility externally. And so as far as tailoring that information, we wanted to start off by putting users through that initial eligibility function, which allowed them to basically get a better understanding of what their organisation was, and with that understanding, be funneled through to information about the 4 areas of tax that was tailored specifically to organisations of that type. So if you're registered, you get one set of information, unregistered, a different set of information, for example. And then as far as using the various pop-ups, it was a matter of determining what the key points were in any given section. And then, for example, say you had a definition that was relevant to a question, you might put that in a pop-up, so you'd embed it in the text, to a click-through, for example, or it might be in one of our tip boxes.
Well, my congratulations also, and I think combining the digital skills and the knowledge of taxation you have makes you about the most employable people in the law school, so this subject should have paid off very well for you. I have one trite question, just for my own information. There's a video at the start of this, which we perfectly appropriately didn't see tonight, introducing it. Did you guys develop that video yourselves, or was that...
We did not. That is.
Yeah, I suspected as well.
No,
it's very good. Wanted to give you credit if you had.
No, it's from not-for-profit.
No, that's true. My question, I suppose, follows on from Katie's a little bit. When you were thinking about your users, not-for-profits could sort of be anything from quite large, sophisticated groups of people to quite small community organisations. How did you think about what level you were going to pitch this at to try and make sure it was accurate but accessible to a wide enough group of people and users?
I think we really tried to pitch this at probably users that don't have sophisticated understanding. If you're a sophisticated not-for-profit, you probably have all of your tax concessions set up, or you have an understanding beyond probably. So we tried to really limit the questions, and the advice that we're giving is quite sort of preliminary. I think I can't remember which of you flagged earlier that the law is very grey at times, and particularly with tax law. For example, there are resources on the tax office website which lawyers and organisations will flag cannot be 100% relied upon, because it's not necessarily the tax office who will be actually applying the law. Courts may take a different view of the law than what the tax office actually takes. So the level of information we provide and the user that we're catering towards is probably more a startup not-for-profit, or a not-for-profit that's on the lower end of the resourcing scale.
Great, thank you very much.
If I could follow up really quickly, which of the videos, were you referring to this video, or was it the early video of the user experience?
The video at the start of the website that sort of says...
Oh yeah, we filmed that.
With the little cartoon figures.
Actually, the graphic, if we click that, we put that together using screen grabs effectively of the graphics provided in that video above. We just thought this was an easy way to sort of help users visualise and conceptualise how the app actually worked, just because I think it can be confusing to understand the reasons for some of those preliminary questions, which aren't necessarily directly referable to tax, at least in a layperson's mind. And that allowed, and so that was just a clear way to show how we funnel user inputs into the outcomes in our report.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well done, team. That was fabulous. The third presentation tonight is developed for the Young Workers Centre. It is the Young Workers Centre Retail Wage Checker. Come on.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name's Junbin Lin. To start off, I'd like to introduce everyone from my team, the Young Workers Centre. To my right, I've got Nick Olderholm, Amelia Tracy, Sam Fari, and Nathan Schofield. Before we get started, first I'd like to thank Sarah Bright from Young Workers Centre, as well as the team from Young Workers Centre. None of this would have been possible without your help. It's been more than invaluable. Young Workers Centre is an organisation within Victoria that looks to help people between the ages of 15 and 30, largely within the employment field. They aim to do this through providing advice, training sessions, fact sheets, and as other social events. And most of the problems that they deal with have to do with bullying, dismissal, harassment, pay disputes, and other things within the workplace. Our app then was therefore, we looked to create an app that would help workers not only check their wage, but also to navigate through the general retail award rate, which can be quite confronting at times. Also, we look to create more opportunities for the Young Workers Centre to have more clients. So I'd like to pass it on to Nick to discuss the design of the app.
Thanks, Yenvin. I'm Nicola Rogerholm, and I'm going to talk about how this app fits into the Young Workers Centre operations and their general mission. So currently, the Young Workers Centre can be contacted by young workers through a range of methods, including a text message service, through the website, or by calling a hotline. But all of these channels lead to the Young Workers Centre volunteers calling the potential clients, and they have to go through a series of triage questions at that first contact. And that requires a collection of a bunch of routine information before they can actually determine whether that young worker is eligible for the Young Workers Centre's services, and then they can book them in for an interview to discuss their issues further. So the Young Workers Centre have found that underpayment inquiries for retail workers constitute about 40% of the inquiries they receive. So this app is intended to cut out that triage process for those young workers. And it saves time for both the Young Work Centre and also potential clients, because it gives the clients 24/7 access to this information, and also it gives the Young Workers Centre the basic information on the worker and their issue so that they can actually get to the heart of the issue sooner. And I'm now going to pass on to Amelia.
Thank you, Nick. My name's Amelia Tracy, and I'll be talking about the design. When designing our app, we constantly had our target audience in mind, namely young people between the ages of 15 and 30, along with the Young Workers Centre. Ultimately, our app needed to fit in with their website, so aesthetically it was important to match their style through colour scheme, font, link style, and so forth. We believed that in order to make a successful, popular app for young people, we would need to keep it simple and quick. If our app was too complicated, users would drop out before finding out their wage. If it was too slow, they might lose interest. The tone was important to us, and we worked closely with the Young Workers Centre to create an uncomplicated and friendly feel. We also implemented a progress bar in order for young people to know how close they were to finishing and keep them engaged in the process. We also kept this design simple in order to keep download speeds low, so things could be loaded quickly. As most of our users would use this app on their mobiles, we tried to optimise the wage checker for mobile use. And our judges on the table, you can see what it looks like on mobiles for your reference. And now I'll pass on to Sam. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Sam Fari, and I'll be giving a brief overview of the calculations that are occurring underneath the app that in the end generate the minimum pay rates that the users are entitled to. So there are 3 key variables that the user inputs, which in the end determine the pay rate that they're entitled to. There's their age, the retail level that they're employed at, and any penalty rates that apply on top of the base rate. Now, first of all, with the age, users that are under 20 get a percentage of the adult rate. Second is the retail level. As you might expect, workers that are working at a higher, have a high responsibility with their work are entitled to greater remuneration. And finally, the penalty rates that apply to the worker's situation. The first of these penalty rates applies to casual workers. So a casual worker will get a 25% loading on top of what a part-time or full-time worker would be entitled to, which is to compensate them for their loss of entitlement to sick and annual leave. And the other factor that comes into the penalty rate is any hours that are worked outside the ordinary hours as defined under the award. And these are on Mondays to Fridays after 6 p.m. and work done on Saturdays, Sundays and public holidays. One issue that we came across in developing the calculations for the app was what happened when there were 2 competing factors that impacted the penalty rate. For example, a casual worker that's working on Saturday will be entitled to 25% increase on their pay for the fact that they're a casual, and an additional 10% because they're working on a Saturday. Our initial thought was that this would simply be increasing the base rate by 25% and then doing another calculation to add another 10% on top. But in consultation with the Young Workers Centre, we found that our interpretation was in fact incorrect. What had to be done was that the 2 penalty rates had to be combined first. So in this case, the 25% and 10%, we do a 35% increase on the base rate. And from that, I'll pass on to Nathan.
Thank you, Sam. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nathan Schofield, and I will be taking you through the app this evening. First page here is the welcome page. It's short and simple, much like the rest of our app. The text is centered and takes up only about 60% of the page. This was to make it feel a bit more app-like, as well as making it look better on mobile, which was a big consideration for us. We'll go to the next page. Disclaimer page. Disclaimer is pretty straightforward. I don't think we need to go into that. So we'll go to next. Here's the age question. This is important for 2 reasons. One of which Sam just talked about, which is that age is necessary to determine the appropriate rate of pay. The other reason, Yunbin mentioned before, that Young Workers Centre only offer their services to people between the ages of 15 and 30. And so we need to make sure that people are within those ranges. So go ahead and put in an invalid age, say, 13. And you'll get a note just informing you that you're not in the eligible range, so you can't actually use Young Workers Centre services, but you can continue using the app if you'd like. So we'll put in, say, 28, a valid age. Continue. This is a very tricky page for us, the award level. Award levels are somewhat difficult to ascertain sometimes if the user doesn't know it, and we believe many people using the application will not know their their award level. So we put some pop-ups here, which are very brief. Pop-ups are there mostly to keep things mobile friendly, to keep things from being too cumbersome. And we've used example job titles rather than actual descriptions of activities because A, the activities were a bit long and didn't really fit well in pop-ups, but also Young Work Center said that, or advised us at the very least, that using job titles would be perhaps more useful for users who aren't really sure. So let's move on then to, let's say, retail level 1. All right, here we have the type of employment. For most of us, this is going to be pretty straightforward, whether you're full-time, part-time, or casual. However, to some people, part-time and casual may be confusing. So we've included just a brief description of the differences between each there. So we'll say casual and move on to the next stage, which is the thing that we're all here for. How much am I supposed to be paid? A big bold letters there, we have the actual minimum rate. If you're getting less than this, you know you're not being paid enough. And most users will look at this page and know that. But if they are being paid enough, for example, we want them to say yes. We want them to continue interacting rather than exiting the app. At this point, they'll be asked if they want to join Young Worker Center's newsletter, because Young Worker Center want to keep in touch with people who are interested in using their services. So if you say yes to this, you'll get an email, and you can just enter that. But let's say, no, I'm not being paid enough, which is the crux of the app, I suppose. There's a follow-up text here with a currently fake testimonial video that we made. I don't know, we're not going to have time to play that, unfortunately, but it's there to encourage users to continue interacting and to give them examples of ways that Young Worker Center has helped other people in the past. We also have a brief description of their services. This is meant to encourage the user to actually give Young Worker Center their contact details so that they can get in touch with them. So we'll say, yes, we're happy to give our details. And we come to a pretty straightforward contact form here. Most of these questions are pretty straightforward, but there's two I'd like to draw your attention to. The first is, what minimum hourly rate are you currently being paid? This is important mostly because there's varying levels of underpayment or perhaps exploitation going on at different workplaces. And this can be helpful for Young Worker Center to help prioritize different claims if a certain claim is more exploitative. Finally, we have a text box here. The text box is there to allow users to put in some open-ended information that might be pertinent to their actual claim, but can't really be cleanly asked in these closed-ended questions we have. So we'll say, yes, we'd like to receive the newsletters for fun. And here we are, last screen. Thanks to you for using it, and it tells you when Young Worker Center will get in touch with you. That is the app. Thank you very much. We'd like to thank again Gary for organizing this wonderful subject, our judges for taking time, their very busy day, to the team at Neota, especially Dominique. Dominique was absolutely essential to this app, and she helped us at all hours of the night. And finally, we want to thank the team, Sarah and Matt at Young Worker Center and their team as well, for helping making this app a reality. Thank you very much.
So well done. I think you certainly achieved your purpose of having a very simple, clean app, and it does. It feels very mobile, so that was fantastic. I would like you to talk to me about the testimonial that you have. I don't care if it's fake or not, but I guess I'd be interested to know why you included the testimonial video, if there was a particular problem that you were trying to address with the video, and if so, how the video addresses that problem.
I think with the testimonial video, our main goal. Sorry, with the testimonial video, I think the problem that we were faced with was that, especially for a lot of young people, not many people want to necessarily provide their contact details or their email address in particular, because in this day and age, most people kind of liken that to spam or just unwanted newsletters. So we thought by including a testimonial video, not only does it it humanizes the app a bit more, so it gives people a face to connect with the organization, but it also allows people to see exactly what the Young Workers Centre advocates do, what kind of advocates they'll be working with, and just overall, I think it'll increase the retention rate on the app. So greater number of users going to the end and a greater number of overall clients at the end for Young Workers Centre as well. Thanks.
Well, my congratulations also, and I think it's an incredibly timely issue. It's something that's been on the front page of the papers probably the whole time you've been developing this, so that's great, and I think the thought that you've given to really making it as easy as possible for people to get to the end is a great idea. I like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. You've focused in on this problem with your partner for the reason it's 40% of their inquiries, which makes a lot of sense. Did you do anything in the design that might allow it over time to be expanded to other industries or age groups, or that might allow them to use the same basic structure to reach further groups of people?
So you're asking if we could expand this to other areas of work?
Yeah, that's
absolutely. At this stage, the Young Workers Centre just wanted something for retail. Yeah. But absolutely, I think it's very, the calculations use could easily just be changed. And the app could be expanded quite easily. We think we tried to, with the actual structure of the app, make it so that it can be expandable quite easily. So, yeah.
Well done. It is actually quite difficult, I think, to navigate awards. I've had a crack early in my career, and I think this would be of great use. I think sort of the youth that are sort of in retail are often going to be very reluctant to sort of rock the boat and come forward. Do you think that there's anything, and again, it might sort of be addressed in the video, but do you think that there's anything that you could do further, case studies, frequently asked questions that might give them some comfort to sort of come forward in the event that the app tells them that they're paid sort of under the award rate?
We decided to initially give them the information, so it's a bit of a confidential process so they can find out what they should be paid and they can have time to reflect on how they want to proceed and if they want to take action. In the testimonial video, we did say that it was a very confidential process. There'd be no pressure if they talked to the Young Workers Centre, and that it would be they would work with them to find out an amicable solution. Because, of course, for young people, they're scared. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to lose their job.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Well done.
Well done.
Thank you. That was a great presentation. The final presentation this evening has been developed for Environmental Justice Australia.
Good evening. I am Karina Bradley. This is Blake Connell, Sophia Georgieff, and Kenta Yamada. Our client is Environmental Justice Australia, and we were given the task of creating an online tool to help everyday Victorians with the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal, VCAT, appeals process. EJA is a not-for-profit legal practice that is dedicated to the protection and restoration of Australia's environment. EJA advocates for environmental protection and the rights of local communities to enjoy a healthy environment. The overarching purpose of the online tool we have created is to simplify the task of going to VCAT by using technology to create greater access to justice for those who may not have the resources to seek legal advice on these kind of issues. Going to VCAT can be a complicated and daunting process, and EJA identified that common deterrents for potential applicants include difficulties with meeting deadlines, uncertainty regarding VCAT's fees, and hesitation when writing appropriate arguments for their statement of grounds. These apps, as such, were designed to have both a practical and educative purpose for the user. Due to this broad scope, we chose to separate our design brief into 3 apps, which can be used either in isolation discreetly or together as a whole process. They have the capacity to guide potential clients through the appeals process, assist them in writing the statement of grounds, and then to help them with applying for reduction of their lodgement fees. In order to ensure that our apps had the maximum amount of impact, we organised a time to present to the registrars of VCAT at their Melbourne office in order to get their feedback. They were also able to provide legal context for our application that we'd been working on. Currently, VCAT has focused resources on other divisions than the planning and environmental list, which has created an opportunity for us to build apps which can meet the unmet demand. This is estimated at almost 3,000 applicants annually, which is very exciting as it means that there is enormous scope for our tools to tangibly impact a large number of people. I'm now going to pass over to Blake, and each of my team members will speak to one of the 3 apps that we've designed. Thank you.
Thanks, Karina. As Karina said, my name is Blake Connell. I'm going to speak to the first of our 3 applications. That is the VCAT Appeals Guide. Now, the VCAT Appeals Guide is where our least knowledgeable user going to VCAT is going to start. So someone who still needs to determine their eligibility or lack thereof to go to VCAT. Of course, for our more experienced users, those who may already know that they have a good claim, they can proceed directly to our 2nd or 3rd applications. And as opposed to the second 2 apps, which are more about generating outputs, so making calculations and filling in forms, this first one is designed to be primarily educative. So it's going to give them an initial determination on eligibility, and it's also going to give them an overview of the VCAT appeals process. So at this point, I'm going to ask Karina to step into the shoes of Jane. Jane is going to be our hypothetical, typical VCAT user, and she's going to attempt to use the VCAT appeals process, specifically the 3 apps we have tonight, in order to protect a native animal in her local area. So Jane, tell us about your predicament.
Well, there's been a development in my local area which threatens a natural animal, which I'm very passionate about, the bittern, and the EJA website, a link on that directed me to your app.
Beautiful. So Jane arrives here at the welcome page of the VCAT Appeals Guide. On the right, we introduce Celia, the information robin. So very early in our consultation with EJA, they said that, unsurprisingly, typical users of the VCAT appeals process have little to no legal knowledge. And our solution to this brief was Celia. Celia is going to give us plain language translations of often very convoluted and legalistic VCAT appeals language. And she's also going to give us tips on how we can navigate the VCAT appeals process more quickly or more efficiently. So for example, if we click on make an application or respond to an application, we get a description of these processes in plain English. Equally, if we click on where am I in the process, we get a visual illustration of where we are in that process. And finally, the header on this app, as well as on all 3 apps, incorporates imagery of Australian wildlife. Now, while this may seem like a simple design choice, in fact, again, in our early consultation with EJA, they said it was important for their users, who often have to invest quite a lot of time and quite a lot of money, their own money, in leading this process, to actually see the Victorian wildlife that they're spending this money and time protecting. So equally, the imagery we use is about motivation. Getting started, Jane, would you like to make an application for review or respond to an application?
Make an application.
Clicking through, we arrive at our disclaimer page, which also has some useful information about other sources of free or legal or cheap legal assistance which can help people with these kinds of problems. Clicking forward. Jane, did you make an objection with the responsible authority?
What's a responsible authority?
Well, as Celia will tell you, Jane, the responsible authority may be your local council, a minister, or a person the planning scheme specifies.
In that case, yes, I did.
Clicking through, we asked Jane, were you applying as an individual or as a group?
An individual.
So Jane's an individual, but if she were to choose group, she would be asked a further set of questions seeking to classify her group, such as an incorporated association or a group of people who are affected, both groups which are created by the relevant act. And then in the final report, she'll get information which is tailored to that group type. But proceeding as an individual, Jane, can you tell us the date your notice was sent?
It was posted to me on the 16th of May.
Perfect. And was that by post?
Yes, it was.
Equally, the I don't know button is significant. Here it means that if Jane doesn't have her notice there in front of her, she can actually continue to click through and will receive some level of untailored information in her final report, which allows the app to play its educative function. But clicking through. So here's Jane's report. Under your result, Jane finds out that she's eligible. Under time limit, she finds out that her application is due on June the 8th and that she has 15 days left to apply. This green tick button actually changes depending on the number of days left that Jane has to apply. For example, if it's under 7 days, she's going to get a yellow warning sign. Under how do I apply, Jane gets a visual of the application form, and in fact that visual is hyperlinked, so if she clicked on that it would take her through to the VCAT website. Equally at the bottom of the page, Jane gets a checklist of all the steps she needs to undertake before going to VCAT, and this is where all three apps start to come together under these two headings, statement of grounds and fees. These were two areas in particular where we found out that people going to VCAT had a particular level of difficulty. So these have been split off from this main app. And importantly here we have hyperlinks to those two other apps. So I'm going to pass over to Sophia. We're going to click on here under Statement of Grounds and we're going to go to our second app.
So I am Sophia Georgieff and welcome to the Statement of Grounds Assistant. The Statement of Grounds are the arguments made by Jane in her application for review. The assistant has pulled apart the legislation and delivered it in a way that makes it accessible for everyday Victorians. Based on the answers of the user, the assistant creates a dynamic and relevant statement of grounds to be included in the user's application for review. The assistant also populates the application form based on the user's inputs as they go through the app. This means that all in one go, Jane can fill in an application with relevant arguments and by adding just a few more details, she can submit that form to VCAT. The value of this is it simplifies a complicated and daunting process and consequently empowers potential applicants. So Jane, before we start, this app takes a bit of time to complete and you might need to do some research. Are you ready to begin?
Absolutely.
Then let's get started. Let's begin. So moving past the disclaimer. So from the report in the VCAT Appeals Guide, we know that Jane wants to make an application and that she wants to have help filling in the application form. I'll quickly draw your attention to the progress bar up the top, which just shows shows Jane how many steps she has to go, and as she moves through, how many steps she's completed. Back to the app, we know that Jane is an objector, and this is not a joint application. So I'll admit, Jane and I actually went through this app earlier and pre-filled some of the forms just to make it a bit easier, a bit faster. So Jane has told us who the council is and the type of land that the proposal would threaten. She's told us where the wetlands are and described the proposed development. And here is where the magic happens, the statement of grounds. Jane, you do not need to answer every question, just those which give your strongest case. Got it?
Yep, that's very clear.
Excellent. So here the proposal threatens a place which has value, specifically aesthetic value. For question 3, Jane has followed the link and found the planning scheme for the Mornington Peninsula area and has found that a proposed development in that zone protects the zone protects native wildlife. For question 4, Jane has indicated that the proposal threatens the protection of water, in particular the impact it has on the habitat of the bittern. So we'll skip over part 2 of the statement of grounds, just for the purpose of time. And finally, Jane has asked about her contact details. Jane, would you like us to fill in your contact details?
Yes, please.
Fantastic. And so there they are. And so here is Jane's report. As you can see, we've prepared an application form for her and detailed her statement of grounds a bit below. So if we download the application form, you can see that, well, when it comes up, each input that Jane has made has been automatically populated into the form. So her name, she's not a joint applicant, her contact details. So there's the details of the council and the proposal, and then importantly her statement of grounds. And you're done.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Hi, I'm Kenji Yamada, and I'll talk about our third app. There are multiple mechanisms through which fees can be addressed. The Fee Help tool guides users to their relevant application and helps them populate the VCAT form. Let's begin. So Jane, what type of fee assistance are you seeking today?
I was hoping to get a waiver of the commencement fees because I'm not able to afford them.
So here we know that Jane is an individual, so we can click next. So these series of questions ask whether Jane has concession status. In this case, she doesn't, but if she did, she'll get a report in a populated concession form. So moving along. This is where we crunch the numbers. As we learned from our presentation at VCAT, calculation errors pose a significant problem for the registrar. Based on Jane's answers, the tool directs Jane to the financial hardship form. To continue, Jane needs to have her details about her income, expenses, assets and debts handy. Would you like to continue, Jane?
Yes, please.
Do you have any dependents?
Yes, I have a hypothetical daughter, Rachel Smith.
So this is where Jane fills in her income. And for the purposes of time, we'll skip over the next few, but they refer to living expenses, assets and debt. So this is an important page. Here, Jane is given an opportunity to talk about her circumstances to VCAT, which they may take into consideration. These are things that don't often get captured through the other values such as income. So for instance, if someone has an up-and-coming operation, which they have to calculate into their expenditures, things like this are included. So Jane, is there anything you'd like VCAT to know?
I guess just as a single mother, I really don't have the capacity to afford to pay these commencement fees, but I'm so passionate about the bitten, and I'd love to be able to have this go ahead.
So like before, we'll include Jane's contact details. And so here we have the report. It tells you to use the financial hardship form. It provides Jane with a populated PDF and directs her to page 5. Let's click the form. Here we see all the information that Jane put into the app. An important way in which the tool adds value is through accurate calculations. So long as the values inputted into such fields as income are correct, there'll be no arithmetic errors, which I know I would probably do. Lastly, we predict that the way that the future will progress, this kind of process will exist largely in the cloud. To facilitate this, we've ensured that our app can directly integrate with this technology. And this brings us to the close of the apps. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank the Neota team, Slater and Gordon, Ariane Wilkinson from EGA, all our user testers, and last but not least, Gary Cazalet, who was telling us the other day about all the administrative stuff that goes behind the scenes, and we thought as students that we had a tough deal with all the assignments, but I didn't realise it was years in the making to make this course happen, so thank you very much.
Congrats, guys, to you and Celia, the information Robin, who I think is going to have a pretty bright future. So, I mean, what I loved about this is your sort of ambition in delivering, you know, a complete solution and an end-to-end do-it-yourself product, which is not easy. It's quite well considered, and I can only imagine the combinations and permutations that went into it. I think sort of that even, you know, the tribunal process can be quite overwhelming for people. I think sometimes there's a bit of a perception that you issue your application for review and next week you're before the member in a week-long hearing. I just wondered whether you sort of considered maybe producing some sort of visual process map for people to give them, you know, some comfort around, I guess, what happens once you issue your application. What does it look like?
That is a great question. We think with the process mapping, on the final report page, particularly for the appeals guide, the final image was their immediate next step. And insofar as the following information of when VCAT's likely to get back to them and everything, that was detailed more in the reports.
Okay.
So
great. Well done.
This is fantastic. I practice a lot in VCAT. I can immediately see how this would be useful both for applicants, quite frankly respondents as well. I think for respondents it's also really useful to have a clearly articulated statement of grounds, and of course the tribunal itself. I loved the Robin. I thought it was a really good way of visually highlighting certain pieces of information. My question is around the application form. So my understanding was that it started the application form, but it didn't necessarily complete the application form. I guess my question is, how complete is it? And when the user goes through to, how do they know which parts of the application form they still need to complete?
So I guess I can speak to that question. So the way in which we set up the PDFs were that it would input answers through the app. But for questions that weren't answered, it was designed such a way that they could enter them into the PDF. To go to your question, we didn't do a way in which we directly highlighted which parts weren't filled in, but we did, in certain circumstances, through the images that pop up, highlight areas which they do need to complete. But generally speaking, people would go through and see what was filled in and what wasn't filled out, but there were certain circumstances which we did directly through those big pop-up images at the end, highlight the areas through greying out the rest of the form in quite an effective way and highlighting the areas which they did need to complete.
And one important, if I may just one important balancing exercise we had there was not making them fill in so much that they might get tired of the application process and simply opt out. We wanted to keep them in the process, even if that meant that the ultimate product that they got was perhaps slightly less tailored to them or slightly less filled in.
Good, thank you. And my congratulations also. It's a really beautiful app, and it was great to hear that history, that it's not just designed to be aesthetically pleasing, but also to link in with your client's interests, which was terrific. I sort of wanted to ask why you called the robin Celia, but I thought that would be a little bit trivial. So, okay, well, I think we'd all like to.
It was based on CELS, which is the Community Environmental Legal Services. Is that it?
Yes.
Don't quote me on that, but that's where we got the Celia CELS.
We're getting a thumbs up from our clients. So.
Excellent. I thought it was really great that you went and talked to the registrars and got some insights. Could you just tell us a little bit about what sort of feedback you got and how it was incorporated into the final product?
Yeah, absolutely. So I should probably say, just to begin with, they were very careful that they're not able to legally endorse our product or anything. So this was entirely informal. Yeah. But we did get really good feedback, and they said that there is a growing push in the sort of VCAT and also in the legal field in general to move towards this sort of thing, where you can provide very tailored information, whereas their current model is more about providing sort of long PDFs which don't necessarily help people who have a very specific question. They did say, however, that this sort of change is going to be very slow to meet the planning and environment list. It represents only 3% of VCAT's claims, even though it is, as I said in my introduction, almost 3,000 applicants a year. So although it's substantial, it's just not a priority for them at the moment. But overall, I think they were really pleased with the application, and they said that they are in the process of designing this sort of thing themselves, and they were happy because what we created was something they could see going into one of their pages.
Fantastic. Well, maybe they could be a client next year for this competition. Well done, everyone.
Well, thank you all teams for those really wonderful presentations. I'm sure that you'll agree that to be able to produce those applications over 8 weeks, that's it. When I was sitting with each of the groups with their client organisations 8 weeks ago, their eyes were getting bigger and bigger and thinking, oh my God, what are we going to be doing here? My eyes were doing the same thing and thinking, we've got a bake-off that's going to be spread around the world in 8 weeks. Are they going to be able to do it? And they have. I'm sure you'll agree. So congratulations, all the teams. So we are going to have a short break now while the judges go out and have their job of working out who is going to get the Slater and Gordon Best Law app. So we'll be back with you in probably about 10 minutes. Thank you. Well, welcome back. The jury is back and we have, I think, a winner. Dina, would you like to come and announce it?
Yes. Oh.
It's a pity we can only select one winner today, but I think it's probably important to call out that all apps have served a very important process of making complex legal information, readily digestible and accessible, and in turn, I think, improving access to justice. So well done, everyone. There's been an enormous amount of work that's gone into that in 8 short weeks to produce each one of those apps. But there can only be one winner. So the Slater and Gordon Prize for all-round best app goes to Environmental Justice Australia. So well done. I think what we loved about, your app is that you had the guts and the ambition to really take it on as an end-to-end product and a do-it-yourself model, which is not easy. To have all those pre-populated forms and all those combinations and permutations is not an easy thing. So well done. And I've got here also, I think, although it is only sort of 3%, I think it's going to be an absolute, use and a great support to thousands of Victorians for years to come.
Thank you so much.
No worries. I've got some other certificates here as well, so it's for you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, judges, for spending the time thinking about that. I'm sure it was a very difficult decision. They were absolutely fabulous apps, and I'm sorry that we don't have 4 winners. It's hard to have a competition, but they are really fabulous apps. Thank you for coming along to watch tonight. Thank you to the audience somewhere else in the world for watching, and good night.